Namo Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana, shining as a self in all beings. We begin the satsang with a prayer by Sapna Ganesh and chanting of Mukta Katrayam by Sri Nandakumarji.
Dakshinamurti Sarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Ramanacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Vande Guru Paramparam Vande Guru Paramparam Shuklam Bharadharam Vishnum Sheshivarnam Chaturbhujam Prasannavadanam Dhyayet Sarva Vignopashantaye Angikam Bhuvanam Yasya Vachikam Sarva Vangmayam Aharyam Chandrataradi Tam Namah Satvikam Shivam. Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya. Namo Ramana to everyone.
Ekam Aksharam Mudinirantaram Bhasate Swayam Likyate Katham Hridaya Kevalam Dhammatram Yaham Maham Sakshat Atmarupena Bhavati Hrudi Vishanasasvam Chindvata Muchyata Avagachalano Atmanishto Bhaktam Deham Ramaya Janakmatam Kaham Buddhirnatasyastyatum Maham Tattva Bhava Shukti Samayu Siddha Saddha Oham Bhavayuta Udomaradhiya Drishtatmanishta Spurtitaya Arunachala Shiva Vidhati Swayam Soham Spurtitaya Arunachala Shiva
Namo Ramana. We now have the chanting of verses from Upadesha Saram by Ashwini Balaji and Uma Shripati.
Namo Ramana. Vayurodhana liyate mana jalapakshiva drodha sadhanam chittavayava shikriyayutaha shakayordvayi shakti mulaka laya vinashane ubhayarodhane layakatam punar bhavati nomritam प्राणबन्धना लीनमानसम् एकचिन्तना नाशमेत्यद नष्टमानसो उत्कृष्टयोगिन कृत्यमस्ति किं स्वस्तितिं यत दृश्यवारितं चित्तमात्मना चित्वदर्शनं तत्त्वदर्शनं मानसं तु किं मार्गणे कृते नैव मानसं मार्गार्जवात् वृत्तयस्त्वहं वृत्तिमाश्रिताः वृत्तयो मनो विद्यहं मन अहमयं कुतो भवति चिन्वत ऐपतत्यहं निजविचारणम् अहमिनाशभाज्यहमहन्तय सुरतिरित्स्वयं परमपूर्णस. नमो रमण.
Namo Ramana. We now have Ramananjali music. The first song will be offered by Srimati Radha along with Vallabh, and the second one by Srimati Pratibha Sundaresh.
Namo Ramana to all. Today we are presenting a song by Sri Sadhuvam Swami. The music is by Sri L. Krishnan. ரமணன் திருநாமம் இறைவன் ரமணன் திருநாமம் ரமணன் திருநாமம் இறைவன் ரமணன் திருநாமம் ஒன்றாலியல்லாததுமுண்டோ ஒன்றாலியல்லாததுமுண்டோ உலகிலே இயலாததுமுண்டோ உலகிலே இயலாததுமுண்டோ ஒன்றாலியலாததுமுண்டோ ஒன்றாலியலாததுமுண்டோ உலகிலே இயலாததுமுண்டோ உலகிலே இயலாததுமுண்டோ ரமணன் திருநாமம் இறைவன் ரமணன் திருநாமம் மறையும் அஞ்ஞானம் ரமணன் திருநாமம் ஒன்றா மறையும் அஞ்ஞானம் ரமணன் திருநாமம் ஒன்றால் ரமணன் திருநாமம் ஒன்றால் ரமணன் திருநாமம் ஒன்றால் உள்ளே மலரும் சிவஞானம் உள்ளே மலரும் சிவஞானம் ரமணன் திருநாமம் ஒன்றால் ரமணன் திருநாமம் ஒன்றால் உள்ளே மலரும் சிவஞானம் ரமணன் திருநாமம் இறைவன் ரமணன் திருநாமம் ரமணன் திருநாமம் இறைவன் ரமணன் திருநாமம். நிறையும் அருளன்பும் ரமணன் திருநாமம் ஒன்றால். நிறையும் அருளன்பும் ரமணன் திருநாமம் ஒன்றால். ரமணன் திருநாமம் ஒன்றால். ரமணன் திருநாமம் ஒன்றால். வாழ்வில் நிலவும் பேரின்பம். வாழ்வில் நிலவும் பேரின்பம் ரமணன் திருநாமம் ஒன்றால். ரமணன் திருநாமம் ஒன்றால். வாழ்வில் நிலவும் பேரின்பம் ரமணன் திருநாமம். இறைவன் ரமணன் திருநாமம். ரமணன் திருநாமம். இறைவன் ரமணன் திருநாமம். உணர்வாயுது போதே ரமணா மறவாதே சொல்வாய். உணர்வாயுது போதே ரமணா மறவாதே சொல்வாய். ரமணா மறவாதே சொல்வாய். ரமணா மறவாதே சொல்வாய். மறுத்தே உளறி திரியாதே. மறுத்தே உளறி திரியாதே. ரமணா மறவாதே சொல்வாய். ரமணா மறவாதே சொல்வாய். ரமணா மறவாதே சொல்வாய். ரமணன் திருநாமம். இறைவன் ரமணன் திருநாமம். ஒன்றால் இயலாததும் உண்டோ உலகிலை இயலாததும் உண்டோ. ஒன்றால் இயலாததும் உண்டோ உலகிலை இயலாததும் உண்டோ. ரமணன் திருநாமம். இறைவன் ரமணன் திருநாமம். இறைவன் ரமணன் திருநாமம். இறைவன் ரமணன் திருநாமம். நமோ ரமண.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. This is an English translation based on Sri Ganapati Muni's Chatvarimsha, and the music is set by Dr. Sharda Natarajan. O Ramana, O Ramana, O Ramana, may your gracious glance be turned once in my direction, so that I may be blessed. O Ramana, Ramana. O Ramana, may your gracious glance be turned once in my direction, so that I may be blessed. O Ramana, Ramana. O Ramana, O Ramana. Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Ramana Shiva. Arunachala Shiva, Ramana, Ramana. Arunachala Shiva, Ramana Shiva. Arunachala Shiva, Ramana Shiva. Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Ramana Shiva. Arunachala Shiva, Ramana, Ramana. Arunachala Shiva, Ramana Shiva. Arunachala Shiva, Ramana Shiva. Life pours forth from the incomparable glory of your shining eyes. O Ramana, what silence is this? It has no parallel on earth, my Lord. O Ramana, may your gracious glance be turned once in my direction, so that I may be blessed. O Oh Ramana, Ramana, oh Ramana, oh Ramana. But for you, O chief among sages, benediction is no virtue, for it is only natural to the effulgent heart which you are. Oh Ramana, may your gracious glance be turned once in my direction, so that I may be blessed. Oh Ramana, Ramana, oh Ramana, oh Ramana. Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Ramana Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Ramana, Ramana, Arunachala Shiva, Ramana Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Ramana Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Ramana Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Ramana, Ramana, Arunachala Shiva, Ramana Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Ramana Shiva. Salutations to the one who has transcended all qualities, whose virtues are depicted even in rocks, brooks, and leaves. Oh Ramana, may your gracious glance be turned once in my direction, so that I may be blessed. Oh Ramana, Ramana, oh Ramana, may your gracious glance be turned once in my direction, so that I may be blessed. Oh Ramana, Ramana, oh Ramana, Ramana, oh Ramana, Ramana. Namo Ramana.
Namo Ramana. The next two Ramananjali songs will be offered. The first one by Savitri Krishnan and Jai Shri Ram Krishnan, and the next one by Revathi Shankar.
அம்மா அம்மா அருணாச்சலத்தை பாராய் சும்மா இருக்குதே, அது போல மந்துளசையாதிருக்க ஆசை பெருக்குதே. அம்மா அருணாச்சலத்தை பாராய் சும்மா இருக்குதே, அது போல மண்புளசையாதிருக்க ஆசை பெருக்குதே. இம்மாதிரத்தின் இருப்பே வலிந்திங்கென்னை இழுக்குதே, ஏதும் வினையாதென் போலிருவென்றென்னுள் ஒலிக்குதே. அம்மா அம்மா அருணாச்சலத்தை பாராய் சும்மா இருக்குதே, அது போல மந்துளசையாதிருக்க ஆசை பெருக்குதே. காண காண கருத்துள்ளொடுங்கி கண்கள் நிலைக்குதே, கண்கள் நிலைக்குதே, கண்கள் நிலைக்குதே. கல்லென்றுயிரை கவரும் காந்த கவர்ச்சி வலிக்குதே. ஆணை பெண்ணை அனைவர் உள்ளமும் அபகரி பெண்ணை அனைவருள்ளமும் அவதரிக்குதே. ஆசை அளிக்கும் ஆசை பெருக்கி அமைதி அளிக்குதே. அமைதி அளிக்குதே. அமைதி அளிக்குதே. அம்மா அருணாச்சலத்தை பாராய் சும்மா இருக்குதே. அது போல மந்துள செய்யாதிருக்க ஆசை பெருக்குதே. உள்ளம் கவர்ந்த கள்வன் ரமணன் ஒளிந்தங்குள்ளானோ. ரமணன் ஒளிந்தங்குள்ளானோ. ரமணன் ஒளிந்தங்குள்ளானோ. உச்சி சிகர வடிவாய் ஒளிரும் ஒற்றை கண்ணனோ. மெல்ல நகை கும்பெற்புரு ரமணன் வெளியில் வாரானோ. ரமணன் வெளியில் வாரானோ. ரமணன் வெளியில் வாரானோ. விலகாதெந்தன் விழியை கவர்ந்த வேந்தன் நாரானோ. அம்மா அருணாச்சலத்தை பாராய் சும்மா இருக்குதே. அது போல மந்துள செய்யாதிருக்க ஆசை பெருக்குதே. அது போல மந்துள செய்யாதிருக்க ஆசை பெருக்குதே. ஆசை பெருக்குதே. ஓம் நமோ பகவதே ஸ்ரீ ரமணாய.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. We are meditating on the 27th verse of Saddarshanam. Satyastitirnahamudeti yatra tacchodhayasthanagaveshanena vinananashyed tannanashyet swatmaikyarupa kathamastu nishtha. The I does not rise in the real state. Search for the source of I dissolves it. How else can one attain the supreme state of one's own self? Attain the self. The supreme state is the one thing which we need to do. When the ego rises, hold on to it. When we pay attention to the ego, it tries to run away. It falls into the source. So we can find the source immediately. To make us get back to the source, the self embodied itself as Ramana, to show us how we can also do it. He led a life for 54 years after his enlightenment to make us also realize and give us his own state. I present to you a song by Sadhguru Swami, Kannada translation by R.N. Jayagopal, music by Vijay Bhaskar. ಅಹಮನು ತೆರೆಯೇ ರಮಣೇಶ ಎದ್ದುಗೈವ ನರ್ತನ ಕಾಣುವುದೇ ಜ್ಞಾನವಮ್ಮ. ಅಹಮನು ತೆರೆಯೇ ರಮಣೇಶ ಎದ್ದುಗೈವ ನರ್ತನ ಕಾಣುವುದೇ ಜ್ಞಾನವಮ್ಮ. ಇದ್ದ ಕಡೆಯೇ ಇದ್ದು ಈ ಲೋಕವನ್ನು ತನ್ನೆಡೆ ಸೆಳೆದೊಳೆಯುವ ಪರಮೇಶನಮ್ಮ. ಇದ್ದ ಕಡೆಯೇ ಇದ್ದು ಈ ಲೋಕವನ್ನು ತನ್ನೆಡೆ ಸೆಳೆದೊಳೆಯುವ ಪರಮೇಶನಮ್ಮ. ಕಡು ತಪಗೈದು ಗಳಿಸಿದ ಆತ್ಮಜ್ಞಾನ ಸುಲಭದೆ ಕೈಗೆ ನೀಡೋ ದಾನಿಯಮ್ಮ. ಕಡು ತಪಗೈದು ಗಳಿಸಿದ ಆತ್ಮಜ್ಞಾನ ಸುಲಭದೆ ಕೈಗೆ ನೀಡೋ ದಾನಿಯಮ್ಮ. ಅಹಮನು ತೆರೆಯೇ ರಮಣೇಶ ಎದ್ದುಗೈವ ನರ್ತನ ಕಾಣುವುದೇ ಜ್ಞಾನವಮ್ಮ. ನರ ಪಶುವಾಗಿ ಬಂದು ನಮಗೆ ಜ್ಞಾನ ತಂದ ಶಿವಜ್ಞಾನ ಹುಲಿಯು ರಮಣನಾಥನಮ್ಮ. ನರ ಪಶುವಾಗಿ ಬಂದು ನಮಗೆ ಜ್ಞಾನ ತಂದ ಶಿವಜ್ಞಾನ ಹುಲಿಯು ರಮಣನಾಥನಮ್ಮ. ನರರೂಪ ದೈವವಿದು ನಿನ್ನಲಿಹ ಅಹಂಕಾರ ನಾಶ ಮಾಡಿ ಸುಖವ ತರುವನಮ್ಮ. ನರರೂಪ ದೈವವಿದು ನಿನ್ನಲಿಹ ಅಹಂಕಾರ ನಾಶ ಮಾಡಿ ಸುಖವ ತರುವನಮ್ಮ. ಅಹಮನು ತೆರೆಯೇ ರಮಣೀಶ ಎದ್ದುಗೈವ ನರ್ತನ ಕಾಣುವುದೇ ಜ್ಞಾನವಮ್ಮ. ಕಾಲದೇಶ ನೋಡದೆ ಮಿತಿಯೇ ಇಲ್ಲದೆ ಕರುಣೆಯ ಹರಿಸೋ ಕಲ್ಪ ತರುವಮ್ಮ. ಕಾಲದೇಶ ನೋಡದೆ ಮಿತಿಯೇ ಇಲ್ಲದೆ ಕರುಣೆಯ ಹರಿಸೋ ಕಲ್ಪ ತರುವಮ್ಮ. ಬಾಲವೃದ್ಧರೆಲ್ಲರ ಪಕ್ವ ಬಲ ಮಾಡುತ್ತ ದೈವಕ್ಕೆ ಅರ್ಪಿಸುವ ಪೂಜ್ಯನಮ್ಮ. ಬಾಲವೃದ್ಧರೆಲ್ಲರ ಪಕ್ವ ಬಲ ಮಾಡುತ್ತ ದೈವಕ್ಕೆ ಅರ್ಪಿಸುವ ಪೂಜ್ಯನಮ್ಮ. ಅಹಮನು ತೆರೆಯೇ ರಮಣೀಶ ಎದ್ದುಗೈವ ನರ್ತನ ಕಾಣುವುದೇ ಜ್ಞಾನವಮ್ಮ. ಅಹಮನು ತೆರೆಯೇ ರಮಣೀಶ ಎದ್ದುಗೈವ ನರ್ತನ ಕಾಣುವುದೇ ಜ್ಞಾನವಮ್ಮ. ನಮೋ ರಮಣ.
Namo Ramana. We now have the reading and the sharing by Sri Nandakumarji.
Namo Ramana. In this the book reading segment of our Satsangh, we continue our readings from Fresh Discoveries, Western Seekers on Sri Ramana Maharshi, a compilation by our founder president Sri A.R. Natarajanji. We have been reading the account of the devotee Suzanne, written by her daughter Monica Bose. As a brief look back, I would like to read some snippets from the account and then go into today's reading. On her visit on the first day itself, she writes like this: once during the morning in the meditation hall, the Maharshi turned and looked directly at Suzanne. Of course, the account is by Monica Bose, her daughter. Once during the morning, the Maharshi turned and looked directly at Suzanne. She would write to us about his wonderful gaze, his brilliant eyes shining like stars. She was sure that she had found her master. She goes on to write, as in the morning, the mood was rather informal. To these pupils aspiring to attain the highest grades of knowledge, the Maharshi apparently did not give any discourses. He replied to questions when they were put to him, usually very succinctly, as if to let the one word or the few words he said make their way directly into the understanding of the questioner. On the other hand, when a young man struggled to grasp what the self was, the Maharishi, with great patience, guided him through his reasoning until at last he got some glimmering of what the Maharishi meant. Of course, the answer to the nature of the self is only to be found on the intuitive level. But the breakthrough of intuition can be hampered by faulty reasoning. That is where the instructions come and clear the reasoning. Apart from these exceptions to silence, there were long, quiet moments when the Maharishi said and did nothing, but which were more effective in conveying transcendent truth than any lecture or sermon would have been. And the last brief portion of our readings from last week. She is sent off from the ashram at 6:30 as the women are asked to stay in the town, and she is highly indignant about this, and a great anger rises in her because she has always been angered by this putting down of women. So she says she got so angry that she went up the hill and stayed inside one of the caves. But what Arunachala does to her in that moment is what is captured in this paragraph. Her anger drove all other thoughts from her mind. It was then that she had a vision of Arunachala as a hill of fire. In its many caves, Siddhas or realized beings, in their pure and invulnerable bodies, sat or moved unharmed in the flames. In her vision, she was taken into the hill and passed through its fire, but felt no fear, no pain. And she saw many worlds existing within the hill in a series of extraordinary revelations. Of course, her anger gets subsided because of this wonderful vision that she sees about Arunachala Hill. We go on to today's reading. This is from Monica Bose itself. The story shifts to what happens to her and her grandmother, who are in England at that time, when her mother Suzanne is in India and in Tiruvannamalai. Monica Bose, the author of this book, who is writing the account on behalf of Suzanne, is a child living in England with her mother Jean, with her grandmother Jean. So this account is Our Life in Tiruvannamalai. In September 1940, when the war began to threaten the safety of Jean and me in England, Suzanne wrote urging us to come to India. This is of course the Second World War, where Germany has started bombing England at that time. She told the Maharishi about her fears for us, and he replied that there was no need to worry, as we would be quite safe. To the mother, Bhagavan is assuring that her daughter and her own mother will be quite safe. Soon afterwards, Suzanne had a dream in which she saw the Maharishi sitting on the threshold of our house in England with one hand raised in the gesture of protection, the Abhaya Asta. It did seem to us that we were specially protected during those hazardous days. Jean, she refers to her grandmother by name only. Jean is the grandmother. Jean, who had been trying for some time to get a passage to India, suddenly received notice to embark on a liner that was due to sail from Liverpool 3 days later. She put the furniture in a storage, thinking that we would eventually return to our house. But we were to hear that the house was destroyed during the bombing. The day that we embarked in Liverpool, there was a raid on the port, but the bombers missed our ship, which must have been a target of attack, since it was carrying troops as well as civilians. Yet, we made the long journey to India round the Cape of Good Hope without any mishap. When we reached Bombay, Suzanne was there, of course, her mother. When we reached Bombay, Suzanne was there to meet us, having driven all the way from the south. She brought us back with her to Tiruvannamalai and to the house in the big street. The very next day, she took us to Sri Ramanasramam to see the Maharishi. Thus, she introduced me straight away to that side of India, which is the most valuable and rewarding, and I am very grateful to her for it. At first, I was a little afraid to come before her great master, about whom she had written so much to us. But when he looked at me, I felt wonderfully safe and happy. He seemed to be infinitely wise and yet completely innocent, like a child. I saw in him great sweetness and gentleness. At the same time, I felt his power. I knew that he would continue to protect us, and indeed, both Jean and I felt his protection again quite soon. I, in my difficulties of adjustment in India, whereas the grandmother, a couple of years later, at a time when she felt she was losing all sense of purpose in life. The manner in which the Maharishi helped her revealed extraordinary insight. In 1942, 2 years after the birth, when we came to Tiruvannamalai from Madras, it had been decided that I should go to a boarding school in Bangalore. It was the first time that Jean and I were to be separated from each other, and it brought home to her that I was growing up and would need her less and less in the future. She was so despondent that Suzanne suggested she ask the Maharishi to guide her. When we become purposeless in life, then the despondency sets in. Suzanne suggested that her mother, Jean, ask the Maharishi to guide her. So the next morning, when we went to him, Jean handed the attendant a little slip of paper on which she had written the simple request, "Please give me your guidance for the future." His spontaneous answer, Bhagavan's spontaneous answer was, "Go back to your religion." When we read the book Hill of Fire, we find that much earlier, when the child, Suzanne, is there and her brother is there, then her brother undergoes some illness and her mother prays and it is not answered, and in some way she leaves her religion at that point. Very, very early in the life of Suzanne, Suzanne's mother Jean comes out of Catholic belief, at least in her mind. She feels she will not be supported by the religion there. Strangely to Monica, Bhagavan hits on the point and says, to find purpose of life, go back to your religion, is the spontaneous answer of Bhagavan. This was an amazing answer because Jean had not informed him or anyone else at the ashram that she had left the religion. That fact was embedded in her past and never brought out, not even before the family. Her presence at the ashram did not indicate it either, for there were people of different faiths there. Seeing that the Maharishi's doctrine of self-inquiry could be practiced within the structures of any religion or even without those structures. In fact, the Maharishi very rarely told someone to follow a particular religion, and his advice to Jean was a notable exception. So, to overcome that despondency to that lady who is the grandmother, Bhagavan says, now you may not have the crutch of taking care of your granddaughter and having a purpose for life, then definitely go back to your religion, you will find the true purpose of life. For over 12 years, from 1940 to 1952, I went to Tiruvannamalai, from Bangalore I go. I went to Tiruvannamalai at least once and sometimes twice a year during my school and later college holidays. I loved the place. Our house was in the street of priests, as the big street was known. The sumptuous temple processions with their gold and silver images on their equally precious vehicles drawn on huge temple cars used to pass down the street on feast days, stopping in front of the houses of the chief high priests so that the offering of the light or arati might be made to the deities. I was never bored while in Tiruvannamalai, a town into which the life of the temple extended in many ways. Number 58, that must be her house number, I think. Number 58 was similar to most of the neighboring houses. In front, there was a wide veranda, part of which was covered by a thatched roof. On this veranda, there were stone benches for sitting and enjoying the cool early morning hours or balmy evening breezes. The massive carved wooden front door opened with a key about 30 centimeters long. One entered into a short passage with rooms to the right and left, which Suzanne, her mother, used for her dispensary. Her mother, of course, was an MD with postdoctoral qualifications. She was also a ballerina. One entered the short passage into a short passage with rooms to the right and left, which Suzanne used for her dispensary. After them came two more rooms that served as our bedrooms when it was not possible for us to sleep on the flat terrace roof above. The passage opened into a large hall divided into three sections by two rows of carved pillars painted a bright primitive blue, the same demon-repelling blue that one saw in the temple. Right at the top of the hall, there were small barred windows which gave on to the roof above. Often the monkeys, which used to travel in families, from one rooftop to the next, on their way from the forest to the hill and back, would peer down inquisitively at us through the windows. In the hall, in the left-hand side section, between the wall and the first row of pillars, we had placed a piano and some bookshelves. In the central section, a settee, some armchairs, and a small round table to create a drawing room. And in the last section, a plain dining table with chairs. It was quite a different scene in the houses of the neighboring high priests and their families, for from choice, not necessity, they contained practically no furniture nor any decoration, not even on the walls, which were bare except for the customary row of the sacred pictures. On the far side of our hall, a door led to the back of the house, where, surrounded by a veranda, there was an inner courtyard which was open to the sky. And in the middle of the inner courtyard, there grew a sacred tulsi plant. The open courtyard was a replica of the on a small scale, of the big enclosures in Lord Arunachaleswara temple, all in keeping with the religious architectural principle of encompassing within earthen walls the infinite expanse of the Brahman. How nicely she has found these things from our culture, that the open courtyards remind us of the Brahman within. Hence, our house was built to be a house of open space, which is what the Maharishi once called the heart. The heart is called as the house of open space by Bhagavan sometimes, and she says her own house itself was a house of open space. How nicely she has devised ways to remind herself of sadhana. In the small backyard, there were fresh smelling plants such as lantana, as well as the bushes of jasmine and passion flower, no doubt planted by a former tenant, to provide the offerings for daily pujas to the household gods. There were also plantain trees, useful not only for their fruit but also for their supply of leaf plates, which being fresh at every meal ensured both hygiene and purity by caste Hindus. Wildlife in the form of small pigs would occasionally make an appearance, squeezing under the back gate, scurrying around the garden, intent on their own pursuits. Formerly, deer, bears, and even elephants used to roam freely around Arunachala, as the medieval Periya Puranam relates. But since those days, many wild animals have disappeared. There were still cheetahs and leopards though, and once someone brought a leopard cub to the dispensary to consult Suzanne on how to rear it. Its mother had been shot by the government hunters because leopards from the forest had taken to attacking the lorries plying on the Chengam Road, one of the main commercial arteries of the town. Beyond our back gate, it was open country. Upstairs, on the terrace of our house, there was only one small room, which, situated next to the stairs, must have corresponded to the first floor room in the house in Madurai where Venkatraman attained self-realization. Another nice way to remind oneself of Bhagavan and sadhana. The first floor had a small room which looked like the room in which Bhagavan attained liberation in the Madurai home, the first floor room. Suzanne used that room, the first floor room, for meditation, and it was there that she spent whatever free time she had. Although she lived as a householder, at heart she was still a homeless wanderer, sincerely detached from material comforts. Often, the only occupant of our drawing room downstairs was one of our patients, an elderly lady who sat with stiff dignity on the settee for an hour or so, because Suzanne believed her health would improve if she could get away for a time from her family environment. When Suzanne was upstairs, I would come up to be with her, occupying myself with reading or writing, or else practicing on the terrace with ballet steps she had taught me. Or I would try to acquire the skill of dowsing with the help of a divining rod and a container of water. This detecting of water, the divining of water, came so easily to Suzanne, my mother, but I showed not much talent for it. I was occasionally watched with some interest by the young Brahmin woman on the opposite rooftop, where she stayed during her unclean days of the month, by tradition not allowed to enter the house proper, where the household deities were kept. Weather permitting, we slept outside the meditation room in the open. As we lay in our beds, the mosquito nets would billow out in the breeze like sails of a boat. The distinctive smell of old stone, incense, and burning oil reached us from the temple, as did the sounds accompanying the pujas, the bursting of firecrackers, and the music of ritual instruments that rose in a crashing crescendo at the moment of God's manifestation approached. Those going off the bells and the harati she calls as the time when Bhagavan manifests during the puja time. Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya.
Namo Ramana. Having been sweetly reminded of Bhagavan's enlightenment and the self-inquiry, we go on to the self-inquiry session, which will be conducted by Dilip Simha.
Namo Ramana. ध्यायेत् शारदचन्द्रसुं
Sadarmukam Tamraravindekshanam Bhaktabhishtavarabhayapradakaram Kaupinamatrojvalam Swatmanandarasanubhuti Sarvanavadyangakam Shrimantam Shri Ramaneshwaram Guruvaram Yogasanadhyasitam Dhyayet Shri Ramaneshwaram Dhyayet Shri Ramaneshwaram Dhyayet Shri Ramaneshwaram. We will commence today's evening Atma Vichara by listening to Bhagavan's Upadesham. As usual, I will be reading from Guru Vachaka Kovai from the chapter Meditation on the Truth. And today the topic blessed by Bhagavan is knowledge and ignorance. Verse 536. People of the world, you who go running again and again, seeking one thing after another, believing each to be the ultimate truth. The wise course is to investigate that one thing which, when investigated, results in all other things ceasing to exist. I repeat, people of the world, you who go running again and again, seeking one thing after another, believing each to be the ultimate truth. The wise course is to investigate that one thing which, when investigated, results in all other things ceasing to exist. If we observe our waking state, it is nothing but what Bhagavan is saying here. Some thought, primarily the first I thought, which rises, and thereupon all other thought rises and makes us believe each to be the ultimate truth. And therefore, there is such degree of reality attributed to the content of the thought that we run again and again seeking one thing or the other. Even if we just take this very dialogue that is happening, the very explanation that I am trying to make, if we go to that, it is trying to explain the truth itself in the form of these words. But then, with this, there is this possibility somebody can counter argue, counter the very notion that I am trying to present here, or what Bhagavan is also trying to present here. Therefore, very much we could have with this joy the possibility of the pain also. That's why Bhagavan is saying, people of the world, you who go running again and again seeking one thing after another, believing each to be the ultimate truth, the wise course is to investigate that one thing which, when investigated, results in all other things ceasing to exist. So, Bhagavan is saying the wise course is not to believe in any of these thoughts. but to investigate the truth that of that one thing, the self, when investigated and when found, when it is found to be the ever-present truth, then what results is all things will cease, all things of differences will cease. We will see that one thing alone is. And therefore, it is a big relief from all the dualistic approaches that is ever going to be vulnerable to the ups and downs in the manifestation. This is the difference between the knowledge and the ignorance. Therefore, Bhagavan asks us that we should diligently question every thought, and no matter how many thoughts that may rise, we should not worry about why am I having so many thoughts? Why is these thoughts whether good? Why is this thought a bad thought that is rising in me in this meditation or in this time? We need not have to worry about the quality of the thought or the quantity of the thought. All we need to recognize, which Bhagavan is saying here, is the wise course is to investigate to whom is it rising and recognize that it is for me, and thereupon, who am I? By repeatedly questioning the source of the I, the first primal division that has happened, and going to the self and reaching it will in due course ensure that all differences will cease to exist. That is the beauty of this direct path of Atma Vichara, which Bhagavan has blessed all of us. This very Atma Vichara is the grace of the Master coming to us to rescue us from the heat of this division that is continuously haunting us, making us believe that they are the ultimate truth. He is, with his immense grace, taking us back to our source with the question, with the inquiry, to whom is this? Who am I? With the immense grace of Bhagavan, for the next 10 minutes, let us do Atma Vichara. Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Namo Ramana. Thank you all.
Namo Ramana. We now go on to the sharing by Sri Venkatesh Deshpande on the Gita Sara of Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi.
Vasudeva Satam Devam Kansachanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Mande Jagadgurum Om Shantakaram Bhujagashyanam Padmanabham Suresham Vishwadharam Gaganasadrusham Meghavarnam Shubhangam Lakshmi Kantam Kamalnenam Yogirudyanagamyam Vande Vishnum Bhavabhayaharam Sarvalokaikanaatham. Om. Bhagwan's grace, we are doing Manana in Bhagavad Gita Sara. Today we are doing Manana on the 31st verse. I'll ask Sapna to kindly chant this, please.
Yes, sir. अतः श्रीमद्भगवद्गीतासारः अनन्याश्चिन्तयन्तो मां ये जनाः पर्युपासते तेषां नित्याभियुक्तानां योगक्षेमं वहाम्यहम् अनन्याश्चिन्तयन्तो मां ये जनाः पर्युपासते तेषां नित्याभियुक्तानां योगक्षेमं वहाम्यहम्. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Sapna. In respect of those devotees who worship me and think of me single-mindedly, for those persons who are constantly united with me, I personally fulfill their personal needs and welfare. Even monks, not to think of devout householders, are anxious and bothered about their future security. They are worried about their old age as to who would feed them and look after them when they become feeble or disabled. The householders argue that if they were to be constantly engaged in the worship of God, how they would discharge their responsibilities towards their children, wife, parents, etc. This is a guaranteed assurance from Lord Krishna that in respect of such devotees, God Himself will look after their entire welfare at home and personally see that all their personal needs are fulfilled. There is a story to illustrate this aspect. Once a devotee is in dire poverty, had nothing to eat in his house, and had to fast perforce for 4 days consecutively along with all his family members. Unable to bear the taunts of his wife, he took a charcoal piece and cut out the portion Yogakshemam Vahamyaham. I attend to all his needs and welfare in his palm leaf manuscript of Bhagavad Gita. While he went away to take bath in the river, a lovely young boy brought to the house of the devotee in a pushcart all the provisions needed for preparing even a feast which would last for an entire year, and delivered them to the wife of the devotee, saying that they were sent by his master, the lady's husband. That boy had a long blackish gash on his forehead wherefrom blood was oozing out. On being inquired by the lady, he replied, this was due to the punishment inflicted by his master for his tardiness. On the return of her husband, she took him to task for his unkind treatment of such a lovely boy. The devotee was shocked and stoutly denied having sent any provisions through a boy. He was overwhelmed with grief when he understood that it was Lord Krishna himself who had personally come as a boy to prove the truth of his guarantee in Bhagavad Gita, and that the wound must have been caused by his merciless cutting of the words by a charcoal piece. The author of this commentary had several similar personal experiences in his life as a wandering monk. This verse indirectly refers to the ultimate sadhana, namely complete surrender to the Lord. If we completely surrender ourselves, including our mind, solely to God, all our requirements to carry on our life in this world will be provided by the divinity. So many commentators compare this shloka to a shining gem located right in the middle of the Gita. This quoted shloka contains Ishvara's promise to all devotees. This is something that we need to have total faith on. Contains Ishvara's promise to all devotees. Here Sri Krishna shows us that Ishvara will personally attend to the needs of his devotees. But he also defines the type of devotee that is being discussed here. It is one who is ever absorbed in the contemplation of Ishvara. For such a person or for such people, there is no fear, suffering, sorrow, or lack of anything. This shloka describes the Nishkama Bhakta or desireless devotee. Who is a Nishkama Bhakta? It is one who is only seeking one thing, that is moksha, liberation. His desire for moksha is equal to no other desire, for that desire will permanently eliminate all other desires. It is a desire for infinite or purnatva. He is ananya or focused goal. Other devotees have anya or diverse goals. So, if we are all desireless devotees, if our only desire is liberation, which is the attainment of Ishvara, what does Ishvara do for us? Sri Krishna says that Ishvara takes care of yoga and kshema. Our entire life comprises of two major activities, acquisition and preservation. The early part of our life goes in acquisition of knowledge, wealth, family, position, and title. This is denoted by the word yoga. The later part of our life is devoted to preservation of what we have acquired. This is kshema. Many commentators cite a wonderful example which we just read about the cutting of the leaf. So the culmination of this shloka's vision is the knowledge there is no such thing as my need or your need. This is a beautiful paragraph. The culmination of this shloka's vision is the knowledge that there is no such thing as my need or your need. If everything is Ishvara and everything is in Ishvara, then he will take care of his own needs. Just like our fingers are not worrying about someone taking care of their individual needs. So finally, I got a nice little few lines. I thought I'll read this out. The paths leading man to God or truth are said to be many. So, the paths leading man to God or truth are said to be many. I will speak only of the shortest. It is to recognize God as the self. This is, we always say, Hridaya Kuhara Madhye Kevalam Brahma Matram. It is so, this this Swamiji also writing the same thing. It is to recognize God as the self in you and then to find him out. So what is the distance? This is a beautiful line. What is the distance then between you and God? Between you and yourself? So what is the distance? There is no distance at all. So we always look for God outside. So what is being said, so we must inquire and say, when we do self-inquiry, we must inquire, what is the distance then between you and God? Between you and yourself? There's no difference at all. A full zero. There's absolutely no difference, because Tattvamasi is you are that. So there's no distance. The distance is ab zero. Yet, how dare, this Swamiji writes, how dare you say to find God and truth is hard? We always say that it is very, very hard to find God and truth. But God is actually, the distance between you and yourself is zero. So once we truly believe this and we truly surrender to Bhagavan and Shri Krishna, then we will be always abiding in the self. Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya. Jai Shri Krishna.
Namo Ramana.
Thanks, Doctor.
Good, come on.
Thank you.
We now have the sharing by Dr. Kallarani Rangaswamy on Jnana Vichara Padalam, Devi Kalottaram.
Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya. Arunachalamena agame ninaipavar agatte veraruppai Arunachalam. Namo Ramana to all. With the abundance grace of Bhagavan Ramana, we are meditating on Devi Kalotra Jnana Vichara Padalam given to us by him. And in the last satsang we learnt, Mamade Indri Karunai Manni. Sorrow creeps in along with the thought that it is mine. It is my house, my money, my family, my body. Even a small crack in my house makes me sorrow. I really cannot part with money because I considered it as mine. My family should always be happy. I cannot bear anything wrong happening to them. My body, oh God, it is my first possession, Bhagavan said. I love myself. How considering this body as myself? Knowingly or unknowingly, we have great love for ourselves. I'll tell you an example. We are going for let's imagine we are going for a function of our kith and kin, say marriage. After 1 week's time, they send us the photos and videos of that function. In that videos and photos, are we going to search the faces of bride and the bridegroom? Not at all. We will be searching for ourselves only because we love ourselves so much. But are we aware of the true nature of ourselves? That is a big question mark. That is why to come out of this falsehood, Bhagavan says, when we do not consider anything as mine, then the heart will be filled with kindness. We will be ready to part with anything that we have to anyone. And in the next stanza, Bhagavan says, Bhudangal tamakku ellame abhayam tande. No one feel afraid of a person with heart full of kindness, because we'll always be ready to do good things to others only, so that all can approach him easily. Mamade Indri Karunai Manni பூதங்கள் தமக்கு எல்லாமே அபயம் தந்து. Say for example, even for begging alms, if a beggar goes to a person who wants to keep everything for himself, he may scold the beggar. Oh fellow, you are very healthy. Go and do some work and earn some money for yourself, like that. If on the other hand, he goes to a person who feels happy to part with his belongings to anyone, the beggar need not fear at all going to that person. Tiruvalluvar, a poet saint of Tamil Nadu, says, ஊரணி நீர் நிறைந்தற்றே உலகவாம் பேரறிவாழன் திரு. If there is a well with drinking water at the center of the village, all can use the water without any hesitation and without any fear that someone will come and scold them. Likewise, if great wealth is possessed by a person who is kind-hearted, ready to help others, that wealth is like a well at the center of the village. Anyone can approach him for help at any time. He will be ready with a smiling face to help them and no need to get fear of him. Bhagavan says, this is the state of mumukshu. Mumukshu does not claim anything as theirs. They will concentrate only on seeking mukti. They will not have any icha other than mukti or moksha. Bhagavan says, don't stop by only helping others. Don't think that it is enough that you are doing good thing. Don't stop there itself. Have great icha for mukti. Aspire for mukti. With this aspiration, learn Devi Kalotra and follow it with a great devotion. Don't have any oscillation in the mind. Don't allow the mind to go out. Instead, with full concentration, bhakti, follow what is said in Devi Kalotra. Because when the mind goes out means the concentration for attaining mukti will be lost. That's why Bhagavan says, Yega vali nirka isaindu. Stick on to one marga. Then only you can find progress. Say for example, if a man wants to get water from the ground, will it be okay if he is digging at 10 different places? No, not at all. He has to dig deep in one place. Then only he can find water. Likewise, concentrate on one marga, and that is what is said in Devi Kalotra Jnana Vichara Padalam. Follow that, and that will lead to our destination. Eka vali nirka isaindu. Bhagavan says, when we want to get out of the tension and anxiety of our mind, we have to give the mind Karuna as a medicine. When Karuna enters one's heart, there will be no anxiety at all, because Karuna makes the mind shanti, makes the mind calm. Because when Karuna is there, forgiveness automatically comes in. One is ready to forgive anything. Naturally, their shanti only will provide. Say for example, in someone does which I don't like at all, I will not get tensed at all, because forgiveness will be there. There is no more tension and anxiety. At that state, any work will be done with Puranatvam, with great concentration. Wholeheartedly, the work has to be done. Bhagavan says, that is why Bhagavan says, Isaindu nirka. Do it with happiness. We do it with full concentration. Do it with happiness. And when this concentrated mind will there, then naturally automatically the truth will be realized, and it has to be, the sadhana has to be undertaken with happy mind, without any doubt, without any oscillation. Let us do this sadhana wholeheartedly. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
Namo Ramana. We now have the sharing by Sri Ujjwal Jagadish on Ganapati Muni's Ramanacentre.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Ramanena sanatamidam bhuvanam, Ramanena sanatamidam bhuvanam, Ramanena sanatamidam bhuvanam, Ramanena sanatamidam bhuvanam, Bhagavat padamanya jana sulabham, Swagunairadhigatya param jayata, Bhagavat padamanya jana sulabham, Swagunairadhigatya param jayata, mamatara hitena satam, nihitena gana prabhuna hridaye. Bhagavat nele anya janarige durlabha, Tanna guna mahimeinda paramapada geddava. This verse, the 9th verse of Ramanacentre, which has been set to Neelambari Raga by Srimati Sulochana Natarajan, the Neelambari Raga, which is usually used in the lullaby, where one is singing a lullaby and one is making a little child going to sleep. In the Tamil tradition, there is usually this the words araro, ariraro, which is used, and this araro, the spiritual significance of these words which are used in lullaby is to say, who are you? Araro, who are you? Are you Hari or are you Hara? Who are you? These are the significance of those words, asking the child to recognize its own divinity. And Ramana also says, Sadhu Swami in one of his songs gives the teaching of Ramana, says, Tungi irundidavai, tungamal tungi irundidavai. To sleep without sleeping. The Jagrata Sushupti, which Ramana calls it. It is that raga which brings out that Jagrata Sushupti, which takes us back to our own divinity. And Ganapati Muni says, Ramana is the one who has attained that supreme state of divinity, which people think it is asulabha, which is very, very difficult to attain. For Anya Jana, for other people, it seems to be very, very difficult. This difficult state, Ramana has attained. And how has he attained? He has attained by his own virtues. Swagunairadi gatya param jayata. He has won that supreme state by his own virtues. And the Shankar Narayan, who has written the commentary on this Ramanacentre, he says that in the Vishnu Puranam, there is a shloka which talks about the significance of the word Bhaga from the Bhagavat Pada. He says that the great saints and sages, they may be given Yati as the name, they may be given as Rishi, Muni, and Suri. These are the usual used names. But Ramana alone, Ganapati Muni, saw that he is divinity manifest. So he gave the name Bhagavan, Sri Ramana Maharshi. He gave this title Bhagavan. And he says there are these 6 qualities which are there for the person who is entitled this title Bhagavan. And what are those qualities? He says, Aishwaryasya Samagrasya. He should be the owner of the whole universe. And he should be Viryasya. He should be valorous. And he should be Yashasaha. He should be famous. And he should have Shriyaha. He should have all the wealth. And he should have Jnana and Vairagya. These are the 6 qualities which, when we see Bhagavan Ramana, he is filled with all these qualities. He was the one who the whole world belonged to. He asked Ganapati Muni, who am I if all the sun and the moon and other stars and the planets are going around my waist? Who am I then? So he is the owner of the whole universe, Ramana, and he is valorous. He faced the fear of death and won over it. He is the valorous one. And fame, he is the one. Muruganar Swami says, Yalle hogali alli ninnade gunaganada male suriyutide. Ramana is the self who is famous all around the universe. And when we talk about Shri, he is Srimanta because the whole universe belongs to him and he does not have any want. Kabir says the Shahenshah is the one who does not desire anything, and Ramana is the epitome of that Shahenshah, with whom all the Shri, all the wealth abide, and he is the epitome of Jnana and Vairagya. But Ramana does not consider these gunas as required to attain that Paramapada. He says in his Atma Vidya Kirtanam, which is translated into Kannada by Dr. Lakshminarayana Bhatta, he says the most important virtue that one need to have is Atma Jnana yenito sulabhayenu saralavo shraddhayinda tiliya baruva janare viralavo. The only virtue that we need to have to realize our divinity here and now is to have Shraddha. And Ramana says, if one has this Shraddha, love towards that divinity which is our own true nature, when searches, melts in love and searches for that divinity in the deep recesses of our heart, there the divine is waiting for us as the beloved to unite with us and give us his own state of divinity to us. And Bhagavan Ramana, through this Shraddha, through this bhakti, through his love towards Arunachala, who was the self, he attained the very state of Arunachala, and he is shining there as the Bhagavan, as the Lord of Arunachala, to give us this very state. And what is the virtue Bhagavan says we need to have? We need to have the Shraddha. And Bhagavan is Bhagavan. He is the God who can give us all that we desire. So we need to pray to that Bhagavan himself to fill us with that Shraddha to attain that Paramapada which he himself shines gloriously. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
Namo Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana, shining as a self in all beings. By the grace of that self manifest as Ramana, we are meditating on the Ramana Ashtottara Shatanamavali composed by Vishwanatha Swami on Bhagavan. In this Ramana Ashtottara, we have dwelt upon the Dhyana Shloka and then on the namas Om Mahasena Mahumshena Jataha Ramano Guruhu Ramanaha Guruhu Akhanda Samvedakara Mahaujaha Karanodbhava Jagat Hitavatara Bhuminata Stalottitaha Parashara Kulottam Saha Sundararya Tapaphalam. Here on the nama of Sundararya Tapaphalam, Vishwanatha Swami says, O Ramana, you are the fruit of the tapasya of Sundaramayyar. And Sadhuam Swami also, in his lullaby to Bhagavan, he sings, Aruttigal Sundara Azhagam Tava Vaalvu Virikshamadil Kaninda So he is that fruit. Selvame talelu. You are that fruit, he says. That fruit which has come on the tree of tapas, there he says, of Sundarar and Alagamma. Aruttigal Sundarar Alagammai Tabavalva Vriksham. In that life of tapasya, the life of righteousness, that tree of Sundaramayyar and Alagamma has borne the fruit of Ramana, he says. You are that fruit. So that might have been inspired by Vishwanatha Swami's saying, Sundararya tapah palam. You are the fruit of Sundararya's tapasya. And we also dwelt last time as to how Sundaram Iyer was the epitome of goodness. He is the epitome of love and goodness. And he was good to everybody, including even to the robbers of those days. That's what we learn. And we learn that the robbers at those times, in those times, had the dharma for themselves. They also had some rules and regulations based on which they did carried forth their profession. And that was that they would inform people, or they would have respect for certain people and live in obedience to those people. And the robbers around Tiruchuri had great regard for Sundaram Iyer. We have 2-3 episodes related to the robbers of Tiruchuri, just to show that Sundaram Iyer's love was equal to all. He was goodness personified, but that goodness was so sweet that he did not judge anybody else as being evil or wrong or bad. Because if he had even an iota of pride in his own goodness, or a thought that he was following the goodness as a sort of a vow, then he would have looked down upon the others who were not living in accordance with these norms, but he did not do so. At the same time, he was very conscious of the right and the wrong. That is the beauty. There is an incident where a person in the police force in Tiruchuri, his house was robbed, and some of the very precious jewels of his wife, those jewels to which she was sentimentally attached, even those jewels were stolen when the house was robbed. Now, the wife of that police officer came to know from the people of Tiruchuri that the robbers held Sundaram Iyer in great regard, and if Sundaram Iyer puts in a word, the robbers might return the booty. However, her husband felt it was below his dignity to approach anyone for help, himself being a police officer. So he did his best to try and find the thieves and to find the booty. But with the passing of every day, his wife got increasingly worried and anxious that if the thieves disposed of the booty, it would be impossible to retrieve it. So she persuaded him to approach Sundaram Iyer. Now Sundaram Iyer, it was a difficult situation for him. At the same time, he said that as the police officer has approached him, he cannot deny his help. And what he did was something very simple. He simply spoke to a few people saying that what the thieves did was not right. He let his thoughts on the subject be known. in such a manner that it would reach the ears of the thieves, of the robbers. And his point was that he said that the robbers shouldn't have robbed a police officer. He said when robbery happens in the home of a police officer, it disturbs the minds of the entire people. Because they say that, okay, when a police officer is not able to take care of his own house, how will he take care of us? And such thoughts arise in the mind of the people. So the robbers have done a really wrong thing by robbing the house of a police officer. They have crossed their line of decorum, their own lines of right and wrong by doing this. This was the opinion which he shared, which Sundaram shared with people, and it reached the ears of the robbers, and the robbers then sent a message to him apologizing for their action and saying that they would return the booty. And Sundaramaya had already told the police officer that he would not indicate to him who the robbers were or where they were situated, but would only try and get back what was lost. So Sundaramaya arranged for the material to be left at the doorstep of the police officer's house, and that's how he got the material back. This story indicates the regard which the robbers had for Sundaramaya. It also indicates how beautifully he understands the role play of the different people. His subtle understanding of dharma, wherein he says to the robbers that they should not rob the house of the police because it disturbs the minds of the people. So they can rob in a situation where people expect to be robbed, in the forest, in the where they lay ambush, and that's how they did to the magistrate. And when he was traveling to Tiruchuri, having overtaken Sundaramaya's cart, but then Sundaramaya came to that spot, and hearing the sound of his bullock cart, which they recognized, the robbers dropped all the case files which they had robbed and other things which they had taken from the magistrate and went away from that spot because of the regard again which they had for Sundaramaya. And the magistrate also understood in what high regard Sundaramaya was held by all the people alike because of his kindness, his justice and his kindness and his love for everyone alike. So that was the tapasya. This is one of the tapas that Sundaramaya performed. One of the penances which Sundaramaya performed was to be loving and kind and just. And from this, the fruit of jnana was born, says Vishwanatha Swami to us. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. We will conclude today's satsang with the chanting of Ramananacentre verses by Radha and Vallabh, followed by the Ashtotra Puja to Bhagavan. It will be performed by Ujjwal today, and the chanting will be by Vaibhavji, Prarthana, Uma and Ashwini, and the Aarti song will also be sung by Ujjwal. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala. கோபமில் குணத்தோய் குறியாய் என்னை கொள்ள கூரையன் செய்தேன் அருணாச்சலா.
கௌதமர் போற்றும் கருணை மமலையே கடைக்கணி தாழ்வாய் அருணாச்சலா சகலமும் விழுங்கும் கதிரொளியின மன ஜலஜமல தீரருணாச்சலா சாப்பாடுன்னை சாதுணவாயான் சாந்தம்மை போவன் அருணாச்சலா சித்தம் குளிர கதிரத்தம் வைத்த முதவையை திர அருண்மதி அருணாச்சலா சீரையடித்து நிர்வாணம செய்தருள் சீரையடித்தருள் அருணாச்சலா சுகக்கடல் பொங்க சொல்லுணர்வடங்க சும்மா பொருந்திடங்க அருணாச்சலா சூது செய்தென்னை சோதியதினி உன் ஜோதி ஒரு காட்டருணாச்சலா செப்படி வித்தை கற்றிப்படி மயக்க விட்டுருபடி வித்தை காட்டருணாச்சலா சேராயனிமை நீராயுருகி கண்ணீராற்றழிவேன் அருணாச்சலா செய்யன தள்ளீர் செய்வினை சுடுமலர் உய்வகையே துரை அருணாச்சலா சொல்லாது சொல்லி நீ சொல்லரனில் என்று சும்மா இருந்தாய் அருணாச்சலா அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ 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 அருணாச்சலா அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா அருணாச்சலம் வாழி அன்பர்களும் வாழி அக்ஷரமண மாலை வாழி. நமோ ரமணா.
नमो रमणा. नमो रमणा. भारद्वाज विश्वनाथ विरचितं श्रीरमणाष्टोत्तर शतनामावलिः अपार सच्चित् सुखवारिराशे यस्योमि मात्रं भुवनं समस्तं गुहाहितं तं रमणं गभीरम् चिन्ताविहीनं हृदि चिन्तयामि. ॐ महासेन महंसेन जाताय नमः. ॐ श्रीरमणाय नमः. ॐ गुरवे नमः. ॐ अखण्ड संविदाकाराय नमः. ॐ महौजसे नमः. ॐ कारणोद्भवाय नमः. ॐ जगद्धितावताराय नमः. ॐ श्रीभूमिनाथस्थलोस्थिताय नमः. ॐ पराशरकुलोत्तंसाय नमः. ॐ सुन्दरार्यतपःफलाय नमः. ॐ कमनीयसुचारित्राय नमः. ॐ सहायाम्बा सहायवते नमः. ॐ शोणाचलमहोलीनमानसाय नमः. ॐ स्वर्णहस्तकाय नमः. ॐ श्रीमद्द्वादशान्तमहास्तैलब्धविद्योदयाय नमः. ॐ महाशक्तिनिपातेन प्रबुद्धाय नमः. ॐ परमार्थविदे नमः. ॐ तीव्राय नमः. ॐ पितृपदान्वेषिणे नमः. ॐ इन्दुमौळिना पितृमते नमः. ॐ पितुरादेशतः चूर्णशैलं प्राप्ताय नमः. ॐ तपोमयाय नमः. ॐ उदासीनाय नमः. ॐ महायोगिने नमः. ॐ
ॐ महोत्साहाय नमः। ॐ कुशाग्रधिये नमः। ॐ शान्तसङ्कल्पसंरम्भाय नमः। ॐ सुदन्दशे नमः। ॐ सवित्रे नमः। ॐ स्थिराय नमः। ॐ तपःक्षपितसर्वाङ्गाय नमः। ॐ फुल्लाम्बुजविलोचनाय नमः। ॐ चन्द्रिकासितहासश्रीमण्डिताननमण्डलाय नमः। ॐ चूतवाट्यां समासीनाय नमः। ॐ चूणिताखिलविभ्रमाय नमः। ॐ वेदवेदान्ततत्त्वज्ञाय नमः। ॐ चिन्मुद्रिणे नमः। ॐ त्रिगुणातिगाय नमः। ॐ विरूपाक्षगुहावासाय नमः। ॐ विराजदचलाकृतये नमः। ॐ उदीतनयनाय नमः। ॐ पूर्णाय नमः। ॐ रचिताचलताण्डवाय नमः। ॐ गम्भीराय नमः। ॐ परमाचार्याय नमः। ॐ सुप्रसन्नाय नमः। ॐ अभयप्रदाय नमः। ॐ दक्षिणास्य निभाय नमः। ॐ धीराय नमः। ॐ दक्षिणाभिमुखाय नमः। ॐ स्वराजे नमः। ॐ महर्षये नमः। ॐ भगवते नमः। ॐ ईद्याय नमः।
ॐ भूमविद्याविशारदाय नमः। ॐ विमलाय नमः। ॐ दीर्घदर्शिने नमः। ॐ आप्ताय नमः। ॐ ऋजुमार्गप्रदर्शकाय नमः। ॐ समदृशे नमः। ॐ सत्यदृशे नमः। ॐ सत्याय नमः। ॐ प्रशान्ताय नमः। ॐ अमितविक्रमाय नमः। ॐ सुकुमाराय नमः। ॐ सदानन्दाय नमः। ॐ मृदुभाषिणे नमः। ॐ दयार्णवाय नमः। ॐ श्री शोणाचलहृद्भूतस्कन्दाश्रमनिकेतनाय नमः। ॐ सद्वर्षरोपदेष्ट्रे नमः। ॐ सद्भक्तवृन्दपरिवृताय नमः। ॐ गणेशमुनिभृङ्गेन सेविताङ्घ्रिसरोरुहाय नमः। ॐ गीतोपदेशसारादिग्रन्थसञ्छिन्न संशयाय नमः। ॐ वर्णाश्रममताधीताय नमः। ॐ रसज्ञाय नमः। ॐ सौम्याय नमः। ॐ आत्मवते नमः। ॐ सर्वावनिमतस्थानाम् आराध्याय नमः। ॐ सर्वसद्गुणिने नमः। ॐ आत्मारामाय नमः। ॐ महाभागाय नमः। ॐ मातृमुक्तिविदायकाय नमः। ॐ विनताय नमः। ॐ विनुताय नमः। ॐ विप्राय नमः। ॐ मुनीन्द्राय नमः। ॐ पावकोज्ज्वलाय नमः। ॐ दर्शनादगसंहारिणे नमः। ॐ मौनेन स्वात्मबोधकाय नमः। ॐ मृच्छान्तिकरसान्निध्याय नमः। ॐ स्मरणाद्बन्धमोचकाय नमः। ॐ अन्तस्तिमिरचण्डांशवे नमः। ॐ संसारार्णवतारकाय नमः। ॐ शोणाद्रीशस्तुतिद्रष्टे नमः। ॐ हार्दविद्याप्रकाशकाय नमः। ॐ अविच्युतनिजप्रज्ञाय नमः। ॐ नैसर्गिकमहातपसे नमः। ॐ कमण्डलुधराय नमः। ॐ शुभ्रकौपीनवसनाय नमः। ॐ गुहाय नमः। ॐ दण्डपाणये नमः। ॐ कृपापूर्णाय नमः। ॐ भवरोगविषग्वराय नमः। ॐ स्कन्दाय नमः। ॐ देवतमाय नमः। ॐ अमर्त्याय नमः। ॐ सेनान्ये नमः। ॐ
ॐ श्रीरमण भगवते नमः। श्रीरमणाष्टोत्तर शतनाम पूजां समर्पयामि। यस्ताणोररुणाचलस्य पदयोः स्मृत्या जनिं प्राप्यत दिव्यानुग्रह सुप्रवाह विवशस्तादात्म्यभावं गतः हृन्निष्ठस्वगभीरनित्यतपसा लोकान् पुनास्येकरात् तस्मै श्रीरमणाय ते नम इदम् लोकोत्तरज्योतिषे।
नमो 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 रमण सदाशिवप्रभावरण नमो महर्षि नमो महर्षि दर्शन सुख मंगल मुख सकल जीवहित सम्मुख ब्रह्म संगिये नमो 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 रमण सदाशिवप्रभावरण नमो महर्षि नमो महर्षि सदा तुष्ट सदा हृष्ट सदा शिवानंद पुष्ट परम महर्षि ब्रह्मनिष्ठ समदर्शी नमो 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 रमण सदाशिव प्रभावरण नमो महर्षि नमो महर्षि ನಮ್ಮ ಮನವದೊಂದು ಕಾಡು ನೀನರಿತಿಗೆ ಅದರ ಜಾಡು ಹಿತವನರಿತು ನೀಡು ತೆಮ್ಮ ಕೊರೆಯ ತಣಿಸಲೈ ಬೇಡಲೆಂದು ಬಂದ ನಾವು ನೋಡಿಯೇ ತಣಿವೆವಯ್ಯ ಮೋಡಿಗಾರನೇ ಹಿತವ ನುಡಿದು ಪೊರೆ ನಮ್ಮನು ಬ್ರಹ್ಮ ಸಂಘಿಯೇ ನಮೋ 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 ರಮಣ ಸದಾಶಿವ ಪ್ರಭಾವರಣ ನಮೋ महर्षि नमो महर्षि। बोलो भगवान श्री रमण महर्षि की जय।